Welcome to the 2 Acre Homestead. Come along with us on our journey from a small suburban homestead lifestyle to our new lifestyle, homesteading in the rural countryside of southern Arizona. We'll share with you our tips, tricks, successes, and failures from both our past suburban lifestyle to our new rural lifestyle, all on the 2 Acre Homestead. Welcome to the 2 Acre Homestead podcast. I'm your host, Lisa.
And Kevin.
And today is our season 1 finale.
So what's new with you lately?
Well, pretty much the same as it was last week, and that is all hands are on deck when it comes to the garden. So we just planted a bunch of tomatoes. I think I have 21 tomato plants that are going in. Some have already been. So yeah, I've just been really busy with that. And we're still working on the magazine. We had a little bit of a setback with our magazine, but we're going forward and hopefully we'll have something out for you guys soon.
Sounds good. And in a couple of weeks, we're getting ready to send our meat birds to freezer camp. Looking forward to that. They're growing, unruly, but it'll be good to have that meat in our freezer, especially when you hear some things. I think you mentioned to me recently, you went to the grocery store to get a few supplies, and they mentioned to you the issues that they're running into with not just getting food items and so on, but also the prices going up, and then a shortage of chicken coming up.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. The cashier at one of our local grocery stores, she had said, stock up on as much chicken as you can. She says because they tried placing orders for their chicken and they are not being fulfilled, both the chicken and flour. So I thought that was really interesting. Some scary times we're living in, but I am happy that we are able to put the meat birds in our freezer.
So, yep. And it just, in times like this, it really drives home the point. This is why we're doing this kind of a thing, because this is real, right? There have been times in the past when we were doing this type of thing, gardening, raising animals for food. And, we heard these things might happen in the future, but it's real now. So it's definitely something that gives us a little bit of comfort.
Yeah, and we're hoping that for all of you that are out there, that's why we really wanted to share this podcast is, just to help you along your homesteading journey, and help you be prepared, not scared, but be prepared for things that are, happening, whether it be a job loss, financial difficulties, whatever the case is. There is some comfort and help financially when you can literally grow your own food. So there's the benefits of growing your own food is just superior all the way around, both from a financial perspective, from a health perspective, and also just helping, being able to help your friends, family, community, being able to provide, some extra food and even mental health. It helps you because you're outside, you're getting that vitamin D3. So really, if you're listening to this podcast, we already know that you want to homestead or are currently a homesteader. But if you're not, or if this is something that you're thinking about, hopefully this kind of persuades you to maybe go down that route.
Yeah. So we wanted to use this episode to talk about some things that we could reflect on from this last season. And for us, having moved to a larger property. So I'll start with you, Lisa. What comes to mind as far as a lesson learned from this season?
That's a really good question. I would say probably my biggest lesson, well, probably two, but my biggest lesson is really trying to wrap your head around the growing season and the zones that you're in. I've been gardening for many, many, many years. But the one thing that I have not experienced is a drastic change in a growing zone. So quite literally, we went from growing zone 9B to 8A. And that doesn't sound like that's a big deal, but it actually is. We had weeks actually where the temperature plummeted at night, especially where we are here. And there were a couple of times where it got into the teens, and then we stayed in the 20s for months. I'm practically all winter. Our overnight lows were in the 20s. And that was an adjustment for me, because you have to imagine we're coming from Phoenix, Arizona, and then Tucson, Arizona, and those particular climates are just, they're hot. What is it? Our joke is it's hot and less hot, especially Phoenix, and it doesn't really get that cold. But here where we are today, it gets really, really cold. So learning learning how to adjust your rhythm of life, or at least my rhythm of life, to these new gardening zones or growing zones, has been a really good lesson for me.
I was thinking along those lines too. We in the past relied on weather reports for the temperature, especially. And one thing we recently did was got one of those digital weather stations that you put a remote sensor out wherever you want. And so that's been interesting too, because we're in an area where there's not a lot of windbreak. We do have a few bigger trees, but not a lot of windbreak. We've got multiple days where it's windy. And so I think that's giving us a better, more accurate take on what the temperature is. So that's something that I think is beneficial, and we'll continue to look at that through the year too, to help give us a more accurate idea of what's going on out there.
Yeah, and that's really true, because I think we've talked about this in other episodes, but the microclimates, I can't stress to you enough, learn your microclimates. When you are starting your gardening journey, learn what your microclimate is. Because, what the weather app that you see on your phone, or what they tell you on the news, if you're still watching the news, they're completely different. And a lot of it has to your microclimates have to deal with wind. Like, for example, the city that we're in, even though we're a very high elevation, so we always have to deal with wind because of our elevation. But then where we are is in a small little valley. It's very, 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 very small, but it's just enough so that the cold settles in really deep here. So, other areas, our neighbors, just, literally minutes down the street, can be growing crops that we can't even think about growing right now. So, your microclimates are a real thing. So that is something that I know for myself personally, I have learned. What about you?
So when I think about, especially since we've moved to this property, to go back to an episode that we talked about before, having a plan helps you to save time and effort. So when I think about that, it's helped us to plan by month, to think ahead of time of what type of projects do I need to be thinking about. So we've had some infrastructure projects with our animals. And as a husband with two littles moving to this property, one thing I juggled with is, do I move our chicken coop here, knowing that we're going to be increasing the flock? Do I take it down? Do I move the chickens? We're talking about a 40-minute drive or so. That proved to be too much. So basically, when we got to this property, had some time to really think that out, try to use things that were already on the property in order to get that infrastructure in place. And then, like I said, as far as when to do it, thinking of which month are we going to do this? When do we need it completed by? What kind of supplies do I need to make or purchase? And so on. That really helped with that mindset.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, it sounds to me like having a plan, having a vision, having a plan, because we've always lived our homesteading life that way, but it really paid off in spades, especially now that we've scaled up to a bigger property.
Scaled up, but also, yeah, I agree. But also, we're in a spot where we live, where we've got to plan if we need to go to buy at least lumber and so on and those type of supplies. I mean, there's a place in town, but their prices are higher. And when the prices are already high as it is, sometimes there's an advantage to planning out and going to a few different stores in town. That's helped as well.
That's right, because we're about 40 minutes away from town. So it's not like, we can just jump in the car and just go. It takes planning. That's some time for us to drive to the next city.
And, having littles as well. Yeah. I mean, I can't take the littles and, juggle 2x4s and plywood and things like that. So they don't have those lumber carts set up to do that. And I'm not going to swing around a board that's 8 feet long, over my kid, but, those type of things. So I've learned that, sometimes I've got to make those trips myself, maybe, and you need time to think. I mean, you can plan, you can say, I'm going to buy 50 of these and 100 of these and so on. But just being there, you need some time mentally to kind of wrap your head around what you're going to do. So that's, that's been a learning experience too. So another thing that came to mind when we were reflecting on this season is we looked at the stats for this podcast, and we were surprised at what episodes were more popular with our listeners.
Mm-hmm. And I think the most popular one was how to start homesteading. And I think the one that was downloaded the fastest was, does homesteading save you money? That one was downloaded the fastest, and also inflation proofing your pantry. So that kind of gives us an indication of where everybody's coming from, what everybody is thinking in terms of homesteading. It was really interesting to see.
Yeah, so it brings to mind something I was thinking about. Even if you're still kind of in the planning stages, or, maybe you're thinking, maybe I should have done a little bit more by this point. Don't feel that way. Don't dwell on that. We're happy that you're here listening. We're happy that you're here wanting to learn, and we're not trying to sugarcoat anything. We're trying to tell you the frustrations, the things we've learned, the oopses we've made, and so on. But just make a change. It starts with mentality, but taking action is sometimes, honestly, the hardest thing. So you can probably read a lot of stories about athletes. You can read about people who set just goals for careers, whatever it is, any type of goal in life. And where a lot of people fail is they don't take action. So, you got to start with mentality, but take action. Small steps are better than no steps. So don't dwell on, I should have done this, I could have done this, especially if you're thinking where things are right now. It's harder to find products, the prices are up and so on. We're here to support you as far as sharing even the things that have been challenges for us, things that have not worked, but it's kind of, a pep rally, so to speak, to be able to encourage you to go ahead and implement what you want to do, what you want to accomplish for yourself, but also for your family.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you've said, because and especially when you talk about the mindset, because there's everybody likes to have a label on everything, and I don't know why or where that has fallen into place in society, but there's some people that have a prepper mentality. There are some people that are more homestead. And then there are some people who think that, if you choose to have, the lifestyle of a homesteader, that, they kind of equate you to like being a prepper, or, a doomsdayer, or somebody who's looking at things negative. And it honestly couldn't be more opposite. For at least for us, homesteading for us is more of the mentality of being a producer and not a consumer, and being in charge of your own food, and shortening the gap between the truck, so to speak, and your home. So we hope that most people listening to this podcast, most of you start to implement plans where you go right to your backyard to get your vegetables instead of going to the grocery store. And as you progress, getting your meat from your own home or from a local farmer, if you're not in a situation where you can provide for your own meat. But, shortening that gap, shortening that supply chain is really going to be helpful. What you choose to do with that shortened supply chain is going to be up to you and your mindset. But, as a homesteader, just having that control over what you choose to eat, because, there's that expression, you are what you eat. And that expression is very true. I mean, it literally is true. You are what you consume. So if you consume food that has been altered, if you consume food that's been injected, I mean, Lord knows, most of us know that, if you look at the package of chicken, it's going to say that, it was injected with broth. Well, who knows what that broth was, and why do you need to inject the chicken with broth anyway? But, you literally are what you are consuming. So, we don't, as a homesteader, I know for myself, I don't want to consume all of that stuff. So, being that producer, producing your own food, taking charge of what you consume and what becomes a part of you and your family is really essential.
So before we wrap up this episode, just wanted to touch on a couple other things. We wanted to announce that we've relaunched our website, the2acrehomestead.com. Looks slicker. We're going to be adding some more features very shortly, and we'll get into more of that later, but we're happy that that's there. And then also for season 2, just a little bit of a teaser, so to speak. What are we going to be adding?
Well, I'm excited to say that in season 2, we're going to be doing a few interviews with you, the listeners. We've chosen 2 particular listeners, and we're going to do, on 2 different episodes, we're going to be doing interviews where they can ask us questions, and we'll be helping them on their journey into the homesteading world. So I'm really excited about that.
Okay, so we're going to take the month of May off, May 2022, from recording the podcast. We'll have some new episodes starting in June. And part of our planning, part of what we're going to be working on is new video content. We'll be adding video content to the podcast, and then we'll also be adding video content to YouTube. So those are some things that we're looking forward to bringing to you, to our listeners. So as always, as we like to wrap up our episodes,
Thanks for listening, and
be safe out there.